Gene Decode worked for more than 20 years in the US Navy on 5 classes of submarines. 4 of them were nuclear. And he has been accumulating a lot of data concerning deep underground military bases, what's happening in them today. He's written some deep dive papers, and we are going to look at one of those more recent deep dive papers. And we are then going to be looking at some of the more recent topical events concerning deep underground military bases.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome back, Gene, to Exopolitics Today.
Thank you, Dr. Saul. It's an honor to be back. Thank you for re-inviting me back to your platform.
Well, it's great to have you back, Gene. People really appreciate your level of knowledge, your kind of 20 plus years in the Navy, your understanding of the nuances of special forces operation. Sorry. I'll have to do that again. Third time's a charm. I'll make it short. Well, it's great to have you back, Gene. People really appreciate your kind of detailed and nuanced knowledge of Navy operations and what's happening in deep underground military bases. So I wanted to go over an incident that you mentioned to me last time, and we didn't get a chance to discuss it on air. And that is that as an adolescent, you went missing for 3 days and you were taken by the Guardian Alliance for protection. So you want to tell us about that?
Yes, of course. So this occurred about this time of year when I was in 7th grade. By that time, I had been skiing, downhill skiing. It was before they had snowboarding and all that stuff. But I started skiing just after I started walking, around 2 years old, somewhere in there. And, by the time you're in 7th grade, I believe you're 12. So 10 years, I was pretty advanced by that time. There was no slopes in the ski area that I couldn't ski quite well. And so I skied alone. My parents were both ski patrol. So I skied all by myself, and, because of how I like to ski some really advanced slopes, my other sibling didn't care for that, preferred something more languishing, or easy. So I was always skiing by myself. And so in doing that, in those days, you go to the ski lift, you either had a Puma, what they call it, like a pole with a platter you sit on, or you had the chair lift. And the chair lift, they had a double chair lift and a triple chair lift at the ski area I was at. So as a single, you would get in the singles line, and they would pair you up with other people. So I was in the double chair lift, and I got paired up with a lady, a young girl about my age, and quite attractive. And I was interested. I was at that age of where you're coming to know yourself as a young man, and I was very interested, and I was hoping to have a girlfriend. So we talked all the way up. She seemed very congenial and nice, but could only ski the really, really almost flat slopes. So I said, I skied a couple runs with her and tried to help her get better. Of course, that takes years in skiing. I said, so it was towards the end of the day anyway. I said, so I'm going to take a couple advanced runs. Is there a way I could meet you again? And she said, yes, with a Christian group. And if you give me your address, don't you come up with your family? And I said, yeah, always this area, though. I'd like to go to other areas. This group you go with, do they go to the other areas? And she goes, all of them, yeah, because, all very close to each other. So I said, great. So how does this work? And she said, just be out in front of your house with your skis and poles and all your gear and boots and all that stuff at 4 a.m. and the van will show up and pick you up. So that would be Saturday, the following Saturday. So I was ready. I got to bed very early on Friday, very, looking forward to get a good night's sleep, to be able to talk to her and right up to this, scary and back down to a scary I don't normally get to go to. She told me which one was the one for that week. I liked that area, so I was looking forward to that and seeing her again. And I went to bed Friday at about probably 8 o'clock at night, because I have to get up at 4 a.m. or to be in Milan at 4 a.m. I have to get up at 3. So I figured 7 hours sleep, I should be good. Get up, get ready, get, dressed, all that stuff in your ski clothes with your long underwear and all that stuff. And, they used stretch pants back in those days with straps under your feet. So it was quite a deal getting dressed. So I went to bed. And the next thing I knew is at that time, I had a friend's older sister who would drive us to school, to the school we went to, because they had stopped busing services. And my friend was in my room telling me to get up. We had to go to school. And if, why am I not dressed and up already like usual and out in front of the house? It's going to be late. Hurry up. So I was like, it's Monday? Yeah. Where you been all weekend? I go, I haven't been anywhere. I went to sleep yesterday, Friday, because yesterday was not Friday. I came into your room Saturday evening and see if you wanted to go skiing Sunday with us. I had a car that, he worked in a garage and he had a car. He would disconnect the speedometer cable so you didn't have the odometer readings, that we would drive up to some ski area. So that was another alternative I had to going to other ski areas. And I go, I would love to go. He goes, well, why didn't you get me? I did. Like I said, I came down to your room. You weren't here. Only your dog. I had a big white, kind of like the one you see, but white and black. Almost the same markings, but she was a white and black Siberian Husky. So he said, you weren't here. So I, went to school that day, came back home, and then my father came home and he comes into my room. I have a bone to pick with you, which means a beating. Already. And I'm like, oh no, what now? Already the day didn't start great. And I'm kind of out of whack and trying to figure out what happened. He goes, why didn't you take out the garbage on Sunday night like you're supposed to for trash pickup on Monday? I go, and he just, started laid into me. And he goes, I came into your room Saturday to remind you, Saturday evening. And I also came into your room on Sunday and you weren't here. I'm like, yeah, I didn't say anything, back talk as they would call it. Well, if I wasn't here, why didn't you put out the trash? But it's like, you weren't here and you're supposed to do that, and on and on and on. So I had apparently, not been in my room Saturday or Sunday, even though I went to bed Friday and of course Monday morning until some short time before I had to go to school. When I woke up, I did not feel like I had slept from Friday at 8 o'clock in the evening till Monday morning at 5:30 or something, whatever it was, when he came and got me. I'm like, so it took me years to, way after all of my death experience, all of that happened, that I got in contact with a being. I'll just say it that way. Telepathically is kind of what you call it. It's more like kithing. She contacts me and she said, you were I was asking about that because it's a mystery of my life. What happened? She goes, we removed you. And I said, why? Because I wanted to meet that girl and go ski at that ski area. And she goes, to save your life. And I said, how would that? I don't understand. And she explained to me that priest, minister, whatever he was trafficking those children. And with my parents, my father, my parents were divorced by that time for years. I was living with him, with his new wife, and I was hardly noticed at all. That they wouldn't notice you gone from, or even care. And so they could have trafficked me, and he was planning on it. He had already learned that from the girl, and he was planning on trafficking me that weekend, and I'd have been gone for good. And so they said that I needed to have things. I was, things that would be coming in the future to let people know about certain things that were important they know. And that's why they took me off Earth and put me back so that when he saw I wasn't there, he just, and I had no way to contact her before cell phones or any of that stuff. So it was just a dead end for me. And so they let me know that they took me off Earth to save my life.
Wow, that's a fascinating story. So that was an intervention by this um, guardian group of extraterrestrials that recognized that there was this honeypot operation that I guess you would call it the deep state church, well, the child trafficking organizations that they had set you up. It was a honeypot operation, I guess.
Yes, it was. Young boys were at that time and I guess even now are more preferred by the upper elites. And I was a very in shape because I skied all growing up. I rock climbed, I backpacked, I hiked. I was an incredible physical specimen at that time. Very, I guess, for a young man, very good shape and somebody they would be highly wanting.
Mhm. Well, this takes us into some of the topics that you discuss in your deep dive into the DUMS. It's we're going to look at the more recent paper or the more recent deep dive that you did, and we're going to pick up from where you talk a lot about William Cooper. You cite his work, The Origins of the Secret Government. So you want to kind of like just introduce the audience to Bill Cooper and what was his importance in terms of revealing the secret government and his time on the briefing team for the commander of the Pacific Fleet.
Yes, Cooper was one of the very first people I've read about of materials he has. It started with Behold a Pale Horse by Milton William Cooper. By that time, he had already had, I believe, one attempt to kill him by running him off a road. He later had another one, and then finally they did kill him for revealing all of these materials, the DUMS and alien groups and all kinds of things that he revealed. And he did quite a few books and materials on all of that. And when I first woke up, the Federalist Conspiracy was a videotape somebody handed me, which is the truth of the IRS and the Federal Reserve, and then Operation Vampire Killer 2000, and by Officer Jack McLam, Behold a Pale Horse, and Dr. Coleman's book, Committee of 300, were the first things I ever went into in understanding this worldwide cabal, deep state, satanic group of individuals that, to have it outside of a library I can't remove things from. I woke up to it and I was going into the library at downtown Honolulu, the Supreme Court Law Library, but those are big, huge archives you can't pull books out of. And I looked up executive orders, for example, executive orders for FEMA to take possession of all properties. That's an executive order in the case of an emergency, or to round up everybody and put them in camps. It's not worded that way, but directly that way, but it's essentially what it states. And then now with what we see with Doge, that's hopefully is going to go away. And so in the process of that, wanting to have materials I could carry and have reference when people ask me, and then additionally having a high clearance at that time and standing command duty officer, I had to inventory every safe for our command, and I would have to go page check everything. And if I'm going to page check it, I didn't originally used to read every page. I said, well, since I got all access to all these top secret safes, I might as well page check them utterly. I'll read every page. So I would take other people's duties. So I was standing duty quite often. Actually, people would love to have that. You do that so they could have more time off, even though you're on shore duty, and they pay me a little something along the way. And then I get a lot of information time where I could go in and read these top secret documents. And so through all of that with Cooper, and of course, Dr. Coleman, who I got to meet in Hawaii, and Jordan Maxwell later also in his books. And then my climbing skills, because I was researching the dumps because of Cooper. And I got to the corner of Kaina Point and I saw the big, huge entrance with the grate over it. So then the following weekend, I climbed Kaina Point and got to the top where I told you about that story, where two Marines in a gray Jeep took me and my student off of Kaina Point, said it's a top secret facility. We're not allowed to be there. And it's interesting. I'm watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now. It's incredibly informative, a lot of information in there. And they actually talk about Kaina Point tracking, top secret tracking facility as a new facility. It's not new. It was there in 1990. So, and it's interesting. It's in a lot of movies. So in all of that, my original big focus was, because Cooper focuses on it a lot, of what is in the dumps, the negative alien groups, the technologies, and all of this. So I started really, really researching that. And when I retired, I really traveled all over the country looking for things, as I've mentioned before, and going into other materials as well, like Phil Snyder.
Now, you want to tell us about the Bilderberg Group, that they actually form a secret world government that controls everything. And if we do the screen share, Jazz, there's a page from your deep dive paper where you make a comment about the Bilderberg Group. You say, um, yeah, I don't know. Can you read that, Gene? Do you want to read that out?
Sure. In actuality, the creation of the Bilderbergers was exactly a creation of the satanic deep state so that they could use the alien technology and resulting needed domes to have a base in which to rule the world in their, quote, new world order, quote, in. This has been the long dreamed of rule of the world by the Satanists over humanity, to be done for all time, and to literally lock down and forever enslave the human race into 15-minute concentration, slave labor, and adrenochrome harvesting camps. The UN was their second attempt after the League of Nations that was stopped by the Tsar of Russia, which led to the execution of the entire lineage of the good rulers of the Russian homeland. The UN is nothing but the skeleton structure for the one world order, otherwise known as the New World Order. And I will say, Bilderberger Germany is where they came from. It's a bunch of world level bankers and other Satanist creatures.
Okay, so these globalists, they really do have a kind of satanic agenda to just kind of like cut humanity off from any kind of self rule, and just make sure that humanity is kind of like concentrated in these slave labor camps and so forth. That's their agenda. Even though on the surface, you have these organizations like the League of Nations, the United Nations, all sounding very positive. So yeah, I guess that explains why Cooper and others were very suspicious of the United Nations.
Yes, and they love to do word games. So you see UN, United Nations, peacekeeping forces, but it also means unpeacekeeping forces. And they quite often, just like NATO, and wherever they go, wars come up, wars result. So we see that now with US aid and what the Doge, Trump, Elon are doing with that. And they say US aid, it's actually not US aid, but the letters stand, for the AID or for something else. But if you break it differently, it said, you said. So they play these games like for the, I think it's the Grammy Awards, the National Academy of Theater and Cinema. I think it is. There's something for the S at the end. So if you switch the letters around, you get Satan. So this is how they play word games, and they play this on us. So they're doing controlled information release because in their way of understanding, they have to tell you what they're going to do. And if you disregard it, even if they tell you backwards, they still believe they told you. That they have to show you up front. And if you don't do anything or say anything against it, that's tacit consent.
Yeah, it's very diabolical how they do that. Um, you also talk about President Eisenhower and his biggest mistake being to give the Rockefellers control of the alien issue. So I guess Eisenhower was someone that wanted to delegate, and he delegated to the wrong people, and they just kind of ran with the alien issue. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so he actually was a president that met with a group. Unfortunately, he signed with a wrong group at Holloman Air Force Base. And he was the group, the good group, wanted the world to disarm nuclear. And he didn't trust that. And then all the heads of all the governments of the world at that time that were nuclear, which was only, the US and USSR, I believe, at that time, would not go there. So he signed with the other group, which is the Negative Alien Agenda group, and then they started an agreement to have these deep underground bases. They would help us build them, and they would get certain ones and certain levels of certain ones, like Dulce. They would have the lower levels, and that's the story of Phil Snyder talks about how he got burned in a firefight, showed scars on his chest and his shoulder, and lost 2 fingers on one hand because of that firefight, where they stumbled on a lower level, I believe is what happened, where a section where it was for the grays. And so he wound up getting pulled out of there. The guy saved his life, but quite several people died in that firefight. And Eisenhower became aware of the rise of the military industrial complex and that this agreement was not being upheld. They were going to be able to abduct and return certain people after they memory wiped them, and they were supposed to let the government of the United States know what people, and they had a number of exact certain ones. They could do cow mutilations, but not to mutilate people and do experiments on people and those kind of things. And Eisenhower found out all of that was happening. They broke the treaty in every possible way. So he was threatened to send the U.S. Army to Dulce, and also to another base in deep underground facility near Yucca Mountain in Arizona, to deal with the group that had broken this, and of course the military industrial complex, to find out what's really going on in those dumps.
Called the Trilateral Commission. And in your deep dive paper, you discuss their symbol. And here it is on the screen share, this kind of symbol. You want to tell us exactly how is that insignia for the Trilateral Commission related to gray aliens that the Eisenhower administration had made a deal with?
Yeah, so their craft bear the symbol. It's not just the Trilateral Commission, it's also a symbolic rendition of 666, which of course is a number that they favor quite heavily because of its biblical significance. And then now technological significance as well, but it's on their ships. And what it symbolizes for them are the 3 main groups that most people now know: the Orion Syndicate, the Greys, and the Mantas, I believe it is, are the 3 main upper groups now. The third group goes in and out of it. So this is a symbol of the 3 groups of the Orion Syndicate that is the ones that Eisenhower signed with.
Okay. Right. So now there was an agreement with the grey aliens to build underground bases and joint bases for technology exchange, and you do kind of discuss that. Yeah, I got a part of it highlighted. Do you want to read that highlighted part?
Absolutely. And this is what I was mentioning previously. It was also agreed that bases would be constructed underground for the use of the alien nation, and that two bases would be constructed for the joint use of the alien nation and the United States government. Exchange of technology would take place in the jointly occupied bases. These alien bases would be constructed under Indian reservations in the Four Corners area of Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, and Colorado, and one would be constructed in Nevada, in the area known as S4, located approximately 7 miles south of the western border of Area 51.
Right. So now we know that agreements were reached with aliens, greys, and underground bases were built where the greys would conduct some of their experiments. So this takes me to some of Cooper's comments concerning batch consignments of human slaves. And but unfortunately, at this point, because we are getting into kind of censorship waters with YouTube, we'll have to kind of like say goodbye to the YouTube audience, and they can go to Patreon or Rumble to watch the rest of this interview.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.